So then I said,
Molasses in
Oh.
Alaska.
how now,
Hello?
brown cow? How now, brown cow?
I hate it here.
Hey.
Hello and welcome to another edition of After School Cinema Club. My name is Dylan Meehan. I am the writer out of the group. I am joined by Jose, the director, and Vaughn, the actor. This is the first time I feel like in months that I am hosting, which is a little weird, but welcome. Today we've got a lot to talk about. Actually, we don't really have that much to talk about now that I say that. We have a few things that are going to be lengthy discussions, but the actual amount of things to talk about is rather small. So we're talking about Alamo Drafthouse Theaters being acquired by Sony, which is shocking. And within like 2 years of this now being legal, a studio has already gone and done that. We're going to talk about Blade being delayed and the fallout from that. Mahershala Ali's much maligned, I shouldn't say maligned, much troubled production of this big IP for Marvel. And we all saw Inside Out 2, Pixar's newest animation movie. So we're going to talk about all that. I guess to kind of lean in first, we might as well just talk about Sony acquiring Alamo Drafthouse. So for those that don't know, Alamo Drafthouse is kind of, I don't want to say necessarily upscale, but an elevated movie theater experience. You can order booze, you can order food directly to your seat. They have a very, very strict, you cannot be late, like no texting, no talking policy as well. They only have them in like major cities. So if you don't live in a major city, there's a good chance there's probably not one near you. But yeah, Sony goes and buys them. Who they were on, basically they had filed for bankruptcy. Wasn't sure if they were going to be around anymore. Gentlemen, what do y'all think?
Oh, just real quick before we jump into thoughts, because this Alamo Drafthouse was new to me until I moved out here to LA. But for folks who may be near an iPic theater, they're very similar in experience in terms of how upscale they are. But yeah, as far as thoughts on it, I'm not anti acquisition. I think it only gets weird when you're only pushing your stuff, which I don't like. Is that gonna be the move? Like, do these just become Sony theaters? Like, do we just get Morbius at every showing? 12 o'clock on a Saturday. Like,
It's
is that
Morbin
what
time,
happens?
baby.
But yeah, if they're still gonna have a wide selection, I appreciate it. And also if they retain a lot of the infrastructure that Alamo Drafthouse has, I think it's good. I did see post acquisition people post the meme of like the person holding the child up in the water, and then there's the other kid crying, and then there's the kid like the skeleton underwater. The skeleton underwater was ArcLight Theater, and I'm like, yeah, because what happened to ArcLight? And like for people who, especially here in LA, who do want that upscale kind of exclusive, like very dare I say snobby experience in a theater, I do think that should exist. Like I'm the type that I want to be in a theater with some reservations. I want to be in a theater with people who are going to like react and like have vocal responses. That's a part of why I love opening night for a show. But for people who do want to be able to just kind of like be more intellectual and absorb a little bit differently, I think that should exist for them, and hopefully Sony retains that infrastructure. We'll see.
The Alamo is for people, for say 3 guys, maybe 20, 30s who enjoy movies, maybe have a podcast, people like that. No, I think Alamo's, I'm surprised, honestly, that it filed for bankruptcy at all. I think, Dylan, you were giving me some context that it's like it was a COVID thing. I mean, everybody got hit during COVID. And from what I remember, Alamo's actually been around for a minute, because I first heard about them funny enough, on a Rooster Teeth podcast, RIP Rooster Teeth, because they're based in Austin, and they were mentioning about how they loved going to the Alamo in Austin because they had alcohol, and that was like the big thing that they were known for. It's like, oh, you can order alcohol, it'll go straight to your seat. That's so cool. And then they would talk about like special events, like they had like a Monty Python night where like everybody got to interact, and there's other versions of that that I guess they were known for, but now they're pivoting to more, or they pivoted to more upscale. But even my experience in the one in downtown LA, I mean, that one was, it was okay. I wouldn't say it was like the bougiest theater I've been to. I mean, some movie theaters are pretty bougie, like um Cinepolis or Cine. I don't know how to say it in English, but those
Sinopolis.
Cinepolis. There we go.
I
Well,
got
that's
you.
like, so it's like the major theater brand in Mexico, and it's just like, okay, whatever. It's a movie theater, but here in the States,
Oh,
it's like a premium thing. Like these
I
are
didn't know that.
bougie theaters. Yeah, they have one here in San Mateo. It's pretty nice, just from like what I've seen, and just like in the area that it's next to. Um, but yeah, to your point, Vaughn, if they don't show Morbius 24/7, then you know we'll see. If anything, it'll be more like how Netflix owns that movie theater in Palisades, and they'll just
Yep.
show like exclusively Netflix alongside other stuff. Because I'm assuming they still show other stuff, right? It's not just a Netflix
From what
theater.
I've seen, every time I visit that theater in the Palisades, it's only Netflix shows.
Ooh, hmm. Then I
And I don't.
wonder, yeah, I wonder if that'll be a big, nationwide rebranding of like, hey, this is now no longer Alamo. This is now the Sony theater. Come here and watch your favorite Sonys, like all the Spider-Men. And
I think the biggest difference there is that like Netflix and Sony have two different goals. Like Netflix wants to be able to have awards, and for that you need to have a like in theater run. And so I think that's a part of what that theater serves for. Whereas Sony, like, they're not really in the streaming game. I mean, you can stream Sony movies, but I think it's going to be different. I don't think that's going to be a concern we should have.
That's actually the main thing I wanted to talk about. So Sony is the only studio that does not have a streaming platform. Full stop. Everyone else either directly
um,
has their own or is partnered with someone
Huh.
else. What were you going to say, Jose?
Sony has PlayStation Now, and you can stream there. So,
I think it's is it still around? I thought they got rid of it.
oh, no shot, really?
Yeah, I
Oh,
only just because
redacted,
like to
redacted.
talk about
Taking it back.
previous episodes and to talk about previous trauma. I used to work at GameStop. I thought it went away. Granted, I no longer work there, and it's been a long time. But I thought I thought that's gone away. But sure, they have PlayStation. I think they called it View at one point.
Oh yeah.
Regardless, like it's not to the same level, and it's not like things are getting like put on there. Whereas like every other studio, whether it's like Universal, they have Peacock, or Disney / like Fox Searchlight has Disney Plus or Hulu. It's like all these other studios have streaming platforms, which are a disaster, by the way. All of these things are hemorrhaging money. And so for Sony to come in and to buy Alamo, and of all the theaters, I think I was looking it up, I think Alamo accounts for less than 2% of all movie screens in this country. So it's like in the grand scheme of things, it's not like they're not buying a Regal or an AMC, so it's not even like them showing, Morbius 24/7 is going to have any true impact on like the bottom line of their movies. However, I do think it makes an interesting play of like they can cater more towards the theater experience and then potentially open up more locations. Um, Sony's an interesting kind of company because they're a hardware company, kind of technically at their roots, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
they
Mm-hmm.
make their money from cameras, from TVs, and from PlayStations, and then like they use things like video games, like they make these incredible video games, but all of that is to sell more PlayStations. All of that is, you know what I mean? So part of me thinks of like, hey, are we now going to start to see Dolby in these Alamo theaters, or is Sony going to create their own version of Dolby in that? That is not my idea. I'm stealing that directly from Davina. So she was just like, oh, so we're going to get Dolby at Alamo now, and I was like, oh, what if we get some kind of like Sony version of that? So it's one of those things of I actually think it's really cool, potentially, or it's just, hey, this big publicly traded company is buying something and they're going to like gut it for parts, but they were already owned by a VC group before this, so like I'd rather them be owned by someone that at least has some skin in the game. So that's my take.
I did confirm PlayStation View, which was their streaming television service, discontinued in January 30th, 2020.
Oh, damn.
R.I.P.
Well,
Mhm.
I feel like because time is a flat circle, right? Uh, whoever runs Alamo is like not cool with Sony buying them. They'll probably stick around for a couple years. Sony will do some change. They will leave. Sony will ruin Alamo, and then those same people will be like, "Hey, let's bring it back in like 2030 or something." And so it'll just be another version of Alamo that will get bought off
It'll be
by. Yeah.
Alamo.
Remember the Alamo.
You got
Or
it.
just called Remember. Yeah, it'll just be
Remember.
Remember. Remember
Remember.
Theaters. That's a great name. Trademark that real quick. Let's trademark that immediately.
I think I'll check in with my friend who's a lawyer in entertainment law, actually. So I'll make sure.
Hey.
I think we might be covered already just by
Yeah.
saying it on this podcast.
After school legal club.
Hey. I will real quick before we move on to a new topic. Shameless plug, and it is as I think about our early days as a pod. I won't specifically mention the thing that Dylan always talks about on the pod, but I will mention the thing that I used to always talk about, but I'm talking about it again. Origin, which I believe deserves the Best Picture nomination and win for next year, will be back in theaters on Juneteenth. Go see this movie. So if you missed it and you're thinking about streaming it, I actually was talking to my mom, and she said it was on a flight she was on. So if you're not flying anytime soon, but you do want the theatrical experience, Origin back in theaters on Juneteenth. Check it out.
So I guess the next major thing to talk about is Marvel's Blade once again loses its director. So I believe his name is Jan Demange. Has left the project. So I think he is at least the second, if not the third, director to leave, and I know that they've already had 2 or 3 script rewrites. Demange's exit marks the latest behind-the-scenes shuffle that Blade has experienced since it was first announced at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019. So it was first set to be released on November 3rd, 2023, with Mowgli filmmaker Bassam Tariq. He left in September 22. And then Demange, who was brought on in November 2022. Yeah. So it has been pushed back from that original date in November 2023 was pushed back a year to September 6th. Then because of the strikes, it was pushed back to February 2025. And then more recently, it was pushed back to November 2025. And now once again, it has lost its director, which is a little alarming. But I am not the Marvel head, although I am a Mahershala Ali head. So I am going to hand the ball over to Vaughn and let Vaughn kind of explain what this means.
Cracks knuckles.
Should we have like a special transition whenever we talk about Marvel?
Yeah, if you could do the Spider-Man spin in, like, well, actually, which I think was a Batman thing.
Yeah.
Dang. No, but I think Spider-Man and Amazing Friends, I think they did it there as well. Anyway, okay. So here's the thing. With Mahershala Ali being attached to this project and really being, I think, the absolute best fit, like I can't think of a better casting choice outside of doing like Old Man Blade or something and like getting Wesley Snipes back. But even then, I think that would just be more nostalgia than anything. But the success of this is so critical, and it needs to get as much care as the Fantastic Four gets. Where I think a lot of eyes are on Fantastic Four to do well because that is Marvel's first family. There are, if you think about, you walk into a comic shop, there are hundreds of comics and thousands of characters to explore. And Fantastic Four, I think, speaks to the core audience, and we've talked about it on the pod before, but speaks to the core audience of like a blockbuster success. Blade gets to speak to, in a lot of ways, a similar audience that like the Deadpool and Wolverine movie is going to like speak to, which is like the folks who want something a bit more adult, a bit more grown up, a bit more gory and aggressive, stuff that you could more freely explore in the comics. So I am also, I'd imagine, as Mahershala Ali is, I'm disheartened by these changes, and I can only imagine why they continue to lose folks. And I know there are like these larger things that are at play, but it's important to get Blade right. And I think we spend a lot of time looking at the success of Iron Man that helped bring Marvel into like the zeitgeist, and like now Marvel is the it guy. But when we cut back to, gosh, okay, it was 2024 now. So if we cut back 26 years ago, 25 years ago, just to make a round number, nobody was looking at Marvel. Nobody cared about Iron Man, Captain America, etc. Like, in fact, all those characters were the scraps from what other studios were willing to take. But in 1998, we got that first Blade film, which grossed, and I have like numbers pulled up here, grossed $131 million in 1998.
Oh my God. For a comic book movie, that's insane.
Right. For a comic book movie, that's insane. And in 1998, that's insane. And for Marvel Comics, exactly. For Marvel Comics to be in the position they were in, like if Blade, that trilogy, does not have the success it has, because I mean, they got screwed in like the Fox deal. In a lot of ways, they got screwed in the Sony deal. So like to sell off X-Men and Fantastic Four, Universal took Incredible Hulk. Who am I? Oh, and Sony, of course, took Spider-Man, just Spider-Man, and the affiliated properties, which was like Sony got the best deal out of all of this stuff. But of those scraps, of those remnants, the only thing that kept Marvel afloat as a company was Blade. When we talk about like commercial success, people, comic sales grew some when Iron Man came out and like the Avengers, and people started getting back into the idea of comics. But for a long time, that cash flow from Blade helped keep them afloat to be able to even do Iron Man in the first place, which I think was done with Paramount to start. So it maybe I'm inflating the importance here, but I would believe it's so important because Blade is also a part of the Midnight Suns. And so when you think about different sectors that Marvel can explore, and in this new, more open world, yeah, you have the core family audience with the Fantastic Four films. You've got an edgier audience with Deadpool, but we've already started to see like Werewolf by Night. I think they introduced Elsa Bloodstone in that. I think she's like the main character. But there's an entire like dark side underworld, like part of the Marvel universe that Doctor Strange is like starting to get into. But like Doctor Strange, Blade, usually Wolverine, because Wolverine's in everything, although I think that's going to change soon. But there are a lot of people who are involved in like magic, mystic arts, demons, all that stuff that I think with the rise as well of like D&D, there's an audience for this stuff. And if they are careless to say, well, let's just throw something together, one, it's going to look bad on Mahershala. Two, they're going to hemorrhage more audience by not taking their time.
Yeah, and I just to kind of jump into to give a little behind the scenes, when I had sent the news, or someone had sent the news in the group chat, I was just like, it's Mahershala Ali with a sword. It's not hard. That isn't to say of this shouldn't be taken seriously, not in that kind of way at all. I absolutely agree this should be taken seriously, and I think along with Fantastic Four, this is the project that can rebrand Marvel. You know what I mean? Like, if this is good, I don't want to say Marvel is all the way back, but it is like okay, wait a minute. They still have a little bit of the juice, because I'm expecting Deadpool and Wolverine to at the very least be solid. Like, I'd be surprised if that's bad. I would honestly be shocked if that's bad. Fantastic Four has a crazy cast, and I'm expecting it also at the very least to be solid, but that's a little bit more difficult because it's going to be like just on such a higher scale. Whereas I think the advantage of Blade, you can make it like the Batman. I don't need an origin story. Have him maybe only be in the early stages of being Blade, but just like drop us in that world. Let him like just give us a little bit, small doses of the world at large. But he's like having one of his first major tests. Have it be gritty and give it to a someone like a Matt Reeves who did the Batman, or give it to someone who has a little bit more style. Give them a little bit more creative freedom, like what they had done, what they do honestly to a lot of their directors, but like similarly what they had done with Black Panther, or even to Eternals, where they kind of let the director kind of run with it. Let this happen. Give it to someone that's maybe not necessarily an auteur, but like let them have the freedom to just create a kick-ass movie with one of the actors of the generation in a role that clearly he wants. He's stuck around through all of this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if, did you see what his attorney said?
No.
Okay,
His lawyer got involved.
Yeah, his attorney after all of this.
I kind of have to at this point.
And my guess is has to be Mahershala saying this basically, and then just like the lawyer putting it out there. But the comments that they said that I'm trying to pull up the full quote. They said the deal was done in 2019 and they still haven't shot it, which is pretty much the craziest thing in my professional experience. She's not saying that. I believe it was a woman. They are not saying that. If Mahershala isn't at least being like, yes, I'm willing to bet. If you are Mahershala Ali's lawyer, you're not just going to go and like shoot from the hip and like send that out there. So I think this is basically Mahershala in the most public way that he can without it being messy, being like, you need to figure this out. Like, this can't be something that you're just gonna like at this point, like I feel like it's not like 1 foot out the door. I think that's like aggressive, but he's probably very frustrated at this point. It's been 5 years, and yes, I know there's a pandemic. Yes, I know there was a writer's strike. But regardless of if there was a pandemic or a writer's strike, it's been 5 years and they haven't shot anything yet, and they've rewritten the script at least twice. There was the rumor that Blade was not even the main character, and I don't know if that was just like Marvel, like, PR spin that they throw out, and it's like, this is why we had to redo the script again. I don't know, but to me, it's like, it's not that hard. It's a movie. It's going to be like a $200 million movie. Of course, that is incredibly difficult, but like, just give me Mahershala Ali holding a goddamn sword, slicing up motherfuckers. Like I'm gonna like that. That is slop that I will gladly enjoy.
But the masses don't get the gritty. The masses don't understand this dark world. The American audiences are scared of demons. Like, there's no way that Disney, the mega corporation that they are, will give any sort of director the 100% off the ropes. Like, hey, here you go, here's $200 million. Like, we obviously know that you can do it, just go ahead and enjoy. There's no way in hell we're gonna get any sort of movie with Disney at the helm. There's just no way. Do y'all know if the rumors of Jordan Peele talking with Marvel was before or after when the news broke of this?
To my knowledge, that was after.
I've missed that. If Jordan Peele would direct
it was rumors. It was rumors. It was rumored that Jordan Peele had talks with Marvel, and it was like a thing for like a weekend where it was like on Friday it'd be like, hey, Jordan Peele is talking to Marvel right now, and then 2 days later, oh, Jordan Peele said they couldn't work out a deal, and everyone was thinking, oh, hey, like, how do you not move heaven and earth to make Jordan Peele make your movie? There's no way in hell. Like, just do it. Just let him do it. But they didn't want to do it for one reason or another. If Jordan Peele directed Blade, that would be sick. I don't think anybody would be opposed to that. I don't think anybody would have any sort of negative response to him directing this movie. but it's just not going to happen. Disney's not going to let it happen.
Unless Deadpool and Wolverine does the crazy numbers that we think it'll do.
It, you know, it probably won't. It'll probably be the weaker of the trilogy. I'm sorry.
You think so?
100%. 100%.
But they're giving us everything.
I got to look at what the box office was before I decide what I think that
I think it will not be as good as Deadpool 2.
from a box office standpoint.
Yeah, what's your stance there? Just in general?
Just like in general. Yeah, the overall kind of like feeling, reactions, yeah, budget, or not budget, but box office. Like Deadpool 1 already had such a Deadpool 1 had a history that then, made people go out and watch it once it actually happened. And then Deadpool 2 really kind of had a bit more liberty to do what they wanted, but even then that was still like not Disney Deadpool. Now that it's officially Disney Deadpool and their oversight is on there, I think it's, I don't know. I'm not looking forward to it. To get
From
into
what
minor.
I've heard,
well, just to get got buttery cum on Wolverine's popcorn face, and you're gonna try to tell me that like oh hey, this project is getting Disneyfied.
So I have only seen like the action trailer, or I've seen all the trailers, but the ones that the people keep showing up are like those action trailers, and I'm like, okay, great, those are funny, those are like gritty, like I like that. But then I forgot what movie I went to go watch. There was like the story trailer that goes over the narrative, and I for one am a fan of the TVA and like Loki, but the fact that they're throwing in that into the Deadpool like just narrative, I'm like, yes, it makes sense in the lore of them catching variances or whatever, but even if you take that into consideration with Loki's events, where does that lie then? Because this is more about a story questions that we don't know because we haven't seen the movie yet. But to bring it all back together, a lot of people didn't like the TVA storyline. A lot of people didn't like Loki season 2. And if you're gonna hitch your narrative of Deadpool to the TVA to make the TVA better or make any of that sort of better, especially with Kang now being canceled, like where are you gonna go with this narrative? And if you don't land the narrative correctly, like no one's really gonna enjoy it.
I will say this: Ryan Reynolds nailed Juggernaut. Like there are these minor things, like he's a fan and he has a lot of creative control. Yeah, he put in, because Deadpool does have a device in the comics that allows him to teleport, and then he can also like do sciencey things to it to allow him to jump in time. So like, and we see that at the end of the second movie. Spoilers for Deadpool 2, but y'all probably whatever. But that was an easy lob to connect that to the TVA to like help build the bigger story, and to bring it back to Blade and why it's important. If you know two things about me, one of those things is probably that I'm a Spider-Man fan, and there are some really, really fun Spider-Man storylines that involve Dormammu, but it does not make sense for Spider-Man to just outright be connected to Dormammu. We need another demon thing. So like,
who is that?
He's a demon, or sorry, not Dormammu. He has a thing with Mephisto. But we need a demon connection to happen in the larger to attach it all together, and that's a part of like what is so magical about reading the comics. Is like you could be a fan of this hero, but you're reading this other comic, and your favorite hero pops in, or the X-Men are doing something like saving a crashing building, and then Fantastic Four come by and help. Or like that's the beauty of the comics, and I think that's a part of what they're trying to help build and flesh out now that the studios are like, everybody's kind of coming back home to roost.
But and also it's just like, this is kind of what Marvel always does, where like I think the only way that you can bring people from the Fox universe is through the TVA. Like there's no other, like there's no way to like be able to do it without like them being involved. Otherwise it just looks kind of weird. Similar like to how, I forgot who just did it, but whoever in the last two Avengers movies was like, Thanos is coming. I think it was Mark Ruffalo. I think he said it like that. I know it's supposed to be the Silver Surfer in the comics. It's like the only comic book lore that I know.
I'm so
at
proud
all.
of you.
Thank you. And so, like, it's one of those things of just like, we're still going to have someone say it. We're not going to bring the Silver Surfer in because, like, we can't for a variety of reasons at that time. And then it was just like, oh, hey, like, you know, we're just going to have Mark Ruffalo do it. It makes sense to just use this as, like, the way that they're going to kind of tell that story. Just as an aside, so Deadpool and Deadpool 2 both basically had the same exact box office return. What do you think that number was?
500.
I was gonna say 450.
So both about 750 million.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is, the budget on the first Deadpool movie, was $58 million.
Yeah.
Second one was about double that at like 110. I don't know what Deadpool
half the movie
Wolverine's...
takes place on the same one freeway. So
yeah. Good point.
And they did that strategically.
Yeah, Deadpool Wolverine. The box or the budget is not on Wikipedia. I'm sure if I were to Google it a little bit longer, I would say it's probably close to the 200. You could make a Blade movie for 100 million easily.
Oh yeah,
easily film that on the streets. You get limited CGI. Like you would absolutely could probably get that movie to make 500 to 700 million and have it still be successful. Like you don't need to spend like oodles upon oodles of money. Shoot it in. Is there a city where Blade is supposed to be? I feel like I remember the first Blade being very clearly Los Angeles, but that's just like when I would watch it with my dad on like TNT.
Yeah. He mostly does New York stuff because I feel like you see him run into like Daredevil. Most superheroes wind up in New York because that's where Stan Lee's from.
Yeah.
Shout out to Iron Man for buying a house in Malibu, though.
That he did. Little West Coast Avengers for you.
Iron Musk.
No.
That's what he was based off of.
Who?
What's his name? Jon Favreau had Robert Downey Jr. hang out with Elon Musk in 2008 to like get his mannerisms when Elon Musk was still like really cool.
I remember when.
In a perfect world, when we don't have studios fighting over properties and actors fighting to get paid and lawyers fighting to get paid, I would 100% love everything that you're talking about, Vaughn, where, oh, hey, there's a fire at the Empire State Building. Here is the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, figuring it out.
Which Fox could have done. Sorry.
Right, but it's not. It's a lot easier to write something, draw something, publish something when you own all of your creations. It's a lot harder to then get a crew of people together, make them memorize lines, make sure they like don't spoil anything, make sure they just enjoy working with each other. There's just a lot more complexity when it comes to something like that. And yeah, in a perfect world, I would love all of that to be just a cohesive universe. But that's just not where we're at right now. And I don't think that we're ever going to get to that spot, even when the megacorp that is Disney will own everything and they'll own everything back. I don't think there'll be a time when we'll watch like a show and then someone will show up, or we'll go to the movies and then someone will show up. Like the reason why a lot of those big character moments in these ensemble films hit is because they did a lot of that work, but also a lot of that like just expectation management,
Yeah.
To go back to Dylan's point about like slowly dripping in like the X-Men, just rip the Band-Aid off, dude. Like again, going back to those ensemble films. Oh, great, you have the Avengers. Now this is a team. okay, but now Iron Man 3 is after the Avengers, and now Iron Man has to deal with his own problems. Like, you guys were just hanging out getting shawarma like last movie. Why can't you just swing by and help Iron Man out with whatever was going on?
As a leb, I love the shawarma reference. I mean, that is fantastic. Thank you.
But like, yeah, they were never able to do that level of like cameos or that level of like connectiveness unless it was like a big budget ensemble film or like a big climactic thing. So I don't think they should drip feed. Oh, now Deadpool with X-Men, or now Deadpool with Wolverine in the TVA. There's a branching timeline where mutants exist. Or spoilers for Captain Marvel 2. There's a parallel reality where the X-Men exist, but it's this version of the X-Men. Like, okay, great. You're starting to give me these things, but just say, hey, by the way, they were here all along, or we just never really interacted with them, and just ignore it and move past it, rip the band-aid off. Not I don't need another origin story, right? To Dylan's point, I don't need another origin story. I don't need to see how Xavier got crippled again. We got to see it in the
First class.
the first class, right? All of that lore exists. Ideally, all of that lore still exists, and I think even Kevin Feige was like, "Yeah, that exists. So why not just here you go, here they are."
My guess is they would just do it in another world, like where they have to have some kind of. I'm trying to hold off sneeze. Where they're going to have some kind of like literal meeting of the worlds in some kind of way. I'm sure there's some comic that Bond can talk about.
Incursion is literally what you're describing. That was in 2014. 14?
Of course, as we all know, the 2014 comic Incursion. Yes.
Actually. I'm not even ashamed, actually. Like,
don't be.
This is my jam.
Don't be. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't like that. Isn't it's just not. It's not something I know anything about. The stories are already there. You know what I mean? Like, from my understanding, the best Marvel movies are when they're essentially just adapting the well-written stories that are already there. The problem is then when they try to start to freelance, which is actually, that might be something that we're gonna that might be a perfect segue to what the final topic that Jose wants to talk about is. I'm just saying.
That is a good segue.
Yeah, I've spoken my piece. I'm good.
Well, I just want to take a moment to rant about Three Body Problem, the show by D&D, David Benioff, and DB Weiss. None of y'all have seen it, right? At all.
No, but for those that don't know, those are the showrunners of the Game of Thrones show.
Right. And so after watching the show, to keep it non-spoilery, ass, garbage. I know I talked to Vaughn like a week ago, and I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. And that's because the first 3 episodes were pretty good. I mean, a lot of the first book is pretty like narrative driven, and there's a lot of setup into like the broader lore and the broader like stakes at play. And so the first 3 episodes really like kind of stick to that source material, but they just start improvising, or they start taking too many creative liberties with the narrative of the story, of the narrative of the books, that it's a completely different show at the end of the day. And so my question that I've been posing to some of my coworkers who've seen it is, maybe they were asked to begin with. There's a reason why Star Wars took away or Disney took away their Star Wars film. Dylan, you're shaking your head, but think about it. When they were writing from the source material, it was fantastic. But when they started to improvise and do their own thing, it was garbage. So
I agree with that part. I agree.
Yeah, I think everyone can agree that the latter, season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones was not as good as before. But in a similar vein, if they are so good at adapting something like beat for beat, word for word, why was this show so bad? And why were there so many changes to the book to make it for the show? Like, I'm sure Game of Thrones has a bunch of those books are thick too, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that they couldn't. There's a lot of changes, but it still worked.
Absolutely,
it doesn't work in the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about something that I've never read and or seen. However, what I can say from a Game of Thrones standpoint, the thing that frustrates me with like the discourse around these two is that they get all of the blame for the last 2 seasons and none of the credit for the first 6 seasons. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what you're saying, but just like the discourse around it is just what I constantly see. And there's a lot of things. You could tell me that they wanted to speed it up because they wanted the Star Wars movie. You could tell me that like for whatever it is. At the end of the day, not a single Game of Thrones book was published from like the first season until the 8th season. I think the last book came out like during the first season, and then no other book came out. That's not their fault, and that's not what they signed up for. Could they have waited? Sure. Should they have waited? Hell, probably. They didn't lose Star Wars because of the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. They lost Star Wars because Star Wars is a mess. Because after The Last Jedi, Kathleen Kennedy decided that we are only going to make baby food product for our 45-year-old men that have no idea how to like handle media that maybe is slightly asks questions. Like everything minus Andor has been the most cookie cutter, simple, nostalgia driven, like just bottom barrel slop to make those people happy, and I hope you love it. But it's just one of those things of it wasn't just like it wasn't their only movie that got, wiped away. Like Damon Lindelof, who did Lost, who did The Leftovers, who did Watchmen, three of the arguably the greatest like TV series of the last 20 years, he didn't get his movie either. And I'm not here saying like, oh, their movie would have been amazing,
Yeah.
but it's just one of those things of like, I can't speak to Three Body Problem. I know it's science fiction. I know adapting science fiction can kind of be hard, although from my understanding, it is the most expensive show other than maybe season 4, I think, of Stranger Things that Netflix has done. I can't speak to that storyline. It's just that I get really frustrated and at these guys getting no credit for seasons 1 through 6 of Game of Thrones, which were legitimately incredible. Legitimately, maybe like probably the best television ever. If Breaking Bad is one, or like The Sopranos or The Wire, pick whatever you want as like if that is peak. Seasons 1 through 6 of Game of Thrones is right there
Yeah.
with it.
Especially when you start
Right there
talking
with it.
genre. Yeah.
And they have to get credit for that. They have to get credit for that.
No, I
You know?
agree. I agree. I agree. Which is why it's so disappointing that their next original thing, another adaptation of a well known book, well loved book, is garbage.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. I want to know how involved they really were, or how. I mean, they're showrunners, so they ultimately have, I'm assuming, final say in what goes on. But who wrote or who adapted the books into the screenplay? Who there are so many other people who make a production great. A lot of the hype goes to like the guy, the title, right? The director, the showrunners, whoever. But there's a lot of people who work in the industry. I mean, Vaughn, there's a crap ton of people on set. Um, yes, give them their flowers for Game of Thrones. I loved Game of Thrones, the entire thing, but there was a noticeable difference when they started to freestyle, and they're freestyling with this, and it's just not good.
I I'm stuck in the same way that Dylan is, in that like I've not read or seen Three Body Problem. But what I can say about D&D, that Weiss and Benioff, um, is that yeah, it's I think a part of why they don't get the credit for the first 6 seasons is because there was a lot of source material to draw from, and so people do focus on being critical about the stuff that they created. And I think my biggest concern with it is just the shift in, not necessarily tone, I don't know what the word would be, but the whole point of Game of Thrones is that we are not in Hollywood. Anybody can get it at any time. And
Yeah.
spoilers for Game of Thrones, I guess. I mean, watch it, but like you follow a character for the bulk of season 1, and then that character dies. and
And
you're
then it
like,
happens
wait.
again and again and again.
And I jumped in on Game of Thrones around like season 3, or like right before season 4 came out. So I had the terrible experience of constantly picking a new character who was my favorite, who would then die. But what the biggest shift that we got in season 7 and 8 there was just that wasn't true anymore. You could see the
Total
plot armor
inverse.
clearly
Total
on certain
inverse.
characters. So
The red shirts.
yeah, like I could imagine if there is a certain tone that you're expecting from Three Body Problem, having read it, and then you're watching this adaptation, which I don't know what the justification would be, because they do have that full body of work to pull from. But if it's not delivering on the promise that the IP said it would, then that's going to be a huge amount of dissonance between the writers and the audience, or the showrunners and the audience.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at it, at least right now, it looks like it's got an 80 on Rotten Tomatoes. The Metacritic is a 70, which I'm actually really surprised at. That's pretty solid. Again, haven't seen it, can't speak to it. A lot of times, though, I feel like the first season of things is usually the weakest. Like, the first season of Game of Thrones, in my opinion, was the weakest. First season of The Leftovers was the weakest. You know, I think, like, the first season of Breaking Bad, like, all of us, like, sometimes things start out really, really strong, like The Bear or something, you know, like Ted Lasso. Like, those things do happen. But it's one of those things of, I'm trying to think of just what's it, the alt history show, the Soviets land on the moon first, For All Mankind. First season was like solid, and they got like really, really good after. So it's like that thing of like maybe the second season, you know, for whatever it is. Again, haven't watched it, so I'm just kind of I am, to Jose's point, I guess I'm the two writers right now, just kind of freestyling, just going off of vibes. But like,
you're doing amazing, sweetie.
Thank you. I'm optimistic, and I think these guys have a track record for the most part of when they adapt stuff faithfully, good things happen.
So, and we'll move on because, yeah, it's kind of hard to be the only person talking about something. I just wanted to get out there on the record that.
Did you see me 10 minutes ago talking about Marvel, by the way?
There are a couple major like set pieces that like just are events that happen in book 1 that like all of the build up and the lead up to those events make that event so much more like impactful, like so much more heavy. And you can probably think of similar events in Game of Thrones, or or any other like Harry Potter, any other Hunger Games, just like things that happen in the movies that happened in the books, and they're just handled in a way better way than they were in Three Body Problem.
Justice for Peeves.
There's three books in like the main trilogy, and they're making 3 seasons of Three Body Problem. For narrative's sake, I think the narrative of book 2 is a lot better than the narrative of book 1. So yes, Dylan, maybe season 2 will be better, but just the way that they handle these these events in the first book in the first season, don't give me high expectations for how they're going to handle season 2. Like there's such an amazing space battle, dude. That just like goes on and on and on in the books, and you're just like, holy shit, this is amazing. But there's a similar point in the show, and it's just like, it happened. Here's a CGI mess for 2 minutes. Great, moving on. Like they just don't have that. I don't think they ever had it. That's my hot take. I don't think they ever had it. They never had the juice.
What was the what was the budget for Three Body Problem? Is that a figure?
It was a lot.
It was a lot per episode,
whatever
right?
it is. It was the second highest for Netflix's history. Granted, I don't know what the set pieces look like, and when you say something of like, "Oh, this battle was like 2 minutes," that to me says a money thing. We know what their battle sequences look like. When they brought, I just forgot his name. I think it's like Michael Stepotnik or something. He directed all of the battle episodes of Game of Thrones. Like, those are ridiculous set pieces. Like those are some of the most iconic and even in the bad seasons, you know what I mean? Like I think of the whatever the trail attack was, where they attacked like the caravan.
The loot
Like
train
that's
attack.
yeah. And then like some of the most unbelievable action sequences I've ever seen, and with a really good mix of both CG and practical effects. Like when those dudes were actually on fire, like some really really cool stuff. Battle of Blackwater Bay, Battle of the Bastards, I just Homefront or whatever the
Hard Home.
Hard Home. Like some of the like truly truly like stunning like battle and like cinematic spaces. Again, I can't that fantasy versus sci-fi. You're able to a lot easier do things from a practical standpoint when it's fantasy. Think of something like Lord of the Rings versus, maybe something like Star Wars, where you obviously are going to have to rely a little bit more on a lot of CG. That's all. I'm just going to defend them on that end.
But you just said that it's the second most expensive show on Netflix, and these guys are quote unquote like renowned showrunners. And also Netflix has unlimited money. So even if it was the most expensive show, if you're saying that the reason why something was bad was because of money, I don't think that's true.
This probably got filmed during COVID. Production costs were higher during COVID. This also came out when like Netflix was losing subscribers. Like this was probably coming before the ad tier model, when like Netflix was at one point, I think
This just came out though.
Just came out, but from when it was filmed and all of that, like this probably takes time. You could tell me that this started being filmed 2019, 2020, 2021. Like when their share price dropped, I think it dropped like 30% or something like that, crazy. And they might have been like trying to like cut corners a little bit, and like I don't know. Again, haven't seen it, so like it's really hard for me to like try to have a mature conversation about something that I haven't seen. So maybe maybe we move on.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to use my command center setup to look some more stuff up about it, and it doesn't want to load, so that feels like a sign.
As an aside, I watched Hitman the other night.
Oh yeah.
Netflix Glenn Powell movie.
Yeah.
Really solid. Shout out Glenn Powell. I'm all here for the Glenn Powell era.
Yeah, he's on a run right now.
Yeah.
Hardest working man in Hollywood right now. Just great. Everyone in it was great too, not just him. Like it was very fun, very enjoyable, great performances. But he starred, co-wrote, and co-produced it. So shouts to him. Tom Cruise clearly rubbing off on him.
Mm-hmm.
It's that Scientology, dude.
Whoa.
The power of Xenu.
Talking about Inside Out 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have the report. Inside Out 2. And there are so many things I need to address up top. So bear with me as I get the credits out as we celebrate the people who made this film possible. And I want to also highlight some of the changes. And I don't know if you all have thoughts about that. But Inside Out 2, directed by Kelsey Mann, written by Meg LaFave, Dave Holstein, Kelsey Mann. Screenplay by Meg LaFave and Dave Holstein. Story by Kelsey Mann and Meg LaFave. Cast. So this is a big cast. So bear with me. I'm going to try to hit the major emotions and main players. But Amy Poehler as Joy. We have Maya Hawke as Anxiety. Shout out to Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke. Kensington Tallman as the voice of Riley. Liza Lapira as the voice of Disgust, which was a change because we used to have, and actually the last one was a change too. It was someone Diaz. Hold on, because it's a lot of side by side. Riley was Caitlin Diaz. Disgust has been changed. That's Liza Lapira now. It used to be Mindy Kaling. Fear also changed. Was Bill Hader. Now it's Tony Hale. Anger, still Lewis Black. Sadness, still Phyllis Smith, who was Phyllis from The Office. Io Debris, shout out to her.
Shout out to
voice
her.
of Envy. And then we have Adele Exarchopoulos That was a wild attempt at that name, but that was the voice of Ennui. Paul Walter Hauser was the voice of Embarrassment, which blew my mind. Shout out to Yvette Nicole Brown, who was Coach Roberts, Ron Funches as Bluefy, James Austin Johnson, who's an SNL long running player at this point, who's the voice of Pouchy. Dylan, what you got?
Have y'all been getting Ron Funches's like wine ads? Where this is on Peacock.
By you saying it, you've sent it my way, and I don't like that.
On Peacock, it's just these ads where he's like, like going grocery shopping as an adult, and he's like bringing like flavored like canned wine, and he's like, "Don't tell them it's store bought." I see that ad every time I'm on Peacock when I'm like rewatching The Office, and then when I heard his character, I was just like I couldn't get out of my mind. Yeah, so I need to talk about it. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we had Yang Ye as the voice of Lance Slashblade, and Steve Purcell's the voice of the Deep Dark Secret. Going back to the OG, just to talk about some of the other big hitters. The first one was directed by Pete Docter and Ronnie Del Arman, who was a co-director. Written by, and there's a lot of credits here, Pete Docter, Ronnie Del Arman, Meg LaFave, and John Cooley. And then it says an additional story material by Michael Arndt and Simon Rich. Sorry, it's an ensemble cast, and there were a lot of changes, and I wanted to make sure that people got their flowers. Now that we know who the players are, what y'all think?
It's too real, man. Too real.
Yeah, I will say
I dug it a whole lot.
From a non-spoiler standpoint, all the things that hit you in the feels and like really landed with the first one, they kicked it up a notch with this one. It's like, oh, we were talking about emotions and like how you have these 5 emotions that help, regulate you and all these things. And then they said in this one, and actually, let's talk about puberty and the process of becoming an adult. And when those new emotions come in and how that happens. Oh my God. And as always, I feel like Pixar, in my opinion, hasn't missed. I can't think of the last Pixar film where I was like not feeling it. Even I will admit, I went into Toy Story 4 with relatively low expectations because I was like, Toy Story 3 was, y'all stuck the landing there. So what else is there to say or do? And then they made Toy Story 4 and I was like, okay, I get it.
Which I remember hearing that the protagonist of Toy Story wasn't Andy, it's Woody. And so in this inevitable Toy Story 5 that's coming out, I think they already announced it. It'll be just another Woody story, but that's a tangent for Toy Story. Dylan, you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I really dug it without going too much into spoilers. Yeah, I mean, I think Pixar has been a little bit of a punching bag. I think mostly undeservedly. No, the movies aren't as good as they were when we were 5, but also because we were 5, and also they had an unbelievable run at first, and then some of the movies have not been as good, but have still been really good. I loved Luca. I loved Coco. Coco is unbelievable. Toy Story 4 is good. Soul, I liked parts of Soul. Some parts of it I didn't necessarily love, but Turning Red was really solid as well. Incredibles 2, so it's, a lot of these movies are still very, very solid, but this was, in my opinion, just as good as I put that right up there with Coco as this is one of the best things that I've seen Pixar do in a long time. I really, really dug it.
I'm just real quick, just gonna acknowledge this now, because as you were talking about all the films and stuff, I was like, yeah, I remember when A Bug's Life came out. I was like, that was Pixar's first film. And I realized, I was like, yeah, I was about 9 or 10 when it came out. And then I realized Jose wasn't even alive
born.
yet.
Yeah.
No. So it's funny when you're like, I remember when this came out. Like, wow, okay, Vaughn. Way to date yourself,
boomer.
buddy.
Yeah, Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo are the first ones that I remember as being going to a theater and seeing, because looking up, it's Toy Story 95, Bugs Life 98. Yeah, I mean, I'm
And I remember it having a good report card in, it was 95. So yeah, it had to be first grade. And my mom, like, we looked at the newspaper, because,
Oh my god.
Oh
and
my
looked
god,
at the
looking at the
movie
Oh
time.
newspaper
my
for
god.
showtimes.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
god,
we went one afternoon because I had a good report card.
I sound like 100 years old. Jose's probably so confused when I was saying that. That's crazy.
No, no,
That's
no.
just like,
I've only seen it in media, but that makes sense.
yeah.
I've never had to look at a newspaper to see the
Oh my
showtimes. That's
God.
Yeah, bro.
ridiculous.
Like, having a newspaper subscription was imperative for a
Yeah.
lot of life.
Yeah.
And getting like Yellow Pages and TV. Anyway, enough
Yellow
about me being
Pages.
old.
Mm.
Enough about me being another character who, let me look up who I never mentioned.
Nostalgia.
Who is it? Yeah.
That was great. That got a laugh out of me every time.
Every time. Not listed. Unless I'm missing it.
Wikipedia had it. It was
Oh, June Squibb.
Shout out to them.
Who's done a lot of like things. But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I will say from another. No, you go.
No. Another thing.
Another thing from a non-spoilery thing, but is fun, is character design. Because Inside Out, I absolutely loved. I saw it a couple times in theaters when it came out, and I've watched it a couple times when I just need a big feel since. And something, and I'll say this kind of evenly, but y'all maybe you've noticed it, maybe not. But something that's really special about the original cast of 5, like joy, anger, fear, sadness, disgust, is that all of everybody except for joy is one color. So like anger is one color, everybody else they're blue, green, purple, red. Joy has the unique property of being yellow with blue hair.
Yeah.
Which speaks to the experience of joy. Like, it's you in order to appreciate it, and I think that's what the journey is for joy in the first film, is like understanding that like there you can have a complexity of emotion, and like a lot of joy is like like you need the sadness to really get the joy. And so in Joy's character design, we get that. And when we look at the cast of new characters, so again, this was something I pulled from just posters and stuff. All of the new characters also have one color. Embarrassment is like pink. Envy, I think, is like a teal kind of color. Even Grandma Nostalgia is like all white. Ennui, mostly like a violet kind of color. But Anxiety, who seems to be the head of this new set of emotions, mostly orange, except for a pair of like greenish blue eyes. And I was like, okay, there's like, and when you talk about like, so the greenish blue would be like the mix of like the disgust, and then the blue would be like fear or like sadness. Like there's the story of like what anxiety, like we can break anxiety down as a more complex emotion as well, and that it's you wanting to be prepared for the future, you being afraid of failing, afraid of harm in some way, and this is what you do. This is how this shows up to push past it. So I just Pixar, they think about so much, and I just that tiny detail I absolutely loved.
They really do. And to get into minor spoilers, that's why fear and anxiety get along. And it's kind of like a couple lines in like the journey while they're walking to a place. He's even like, oh, I really vibe with her. Oh, I really like her. Oh, I think I could change her. Like there's there's that like rapport of like, oh, this guy, they like, or he likes her. And like, there's that connection between the two, which makes sense. And a lot of anxiety is from that fear that you were saying.
Action-oriented fear.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
And I didn't identify with any of it at all.
So it's too real, dude. It's too real. I just wanted to get my point in before I guess we move on to spoilers and just other interpretations of emotions. Pixar now in their era is in their animation era. I mean, they're an animation company, but god damn was this animation amazing. The the textures, the details, the just everything is so good, and it's just been getting better and better and better and better nonstop, nonstop. I think the one though I can remember before this was like Encanto, where they really just kind of pushed the bar to like this is the next level of Pixar animation, and then I think Inside Out 2 is now that even level even further because everything just capture a still image and you could see every individual detail. Everything is so precisely put in that area and has so much care. It's amazing. It's for sure.
Real quick, I'm gonna jump in. Encanto is actually not a Pixar movie. I'm only gonna say that
Oh
because
shit.
the Pixar heads,
Okay.
are probably gonna come for us.
and I am gonna turn in my gun and my badge. I'm retiring from the podcast.
I only know that only because I'm literally looking at a list of Pixar movies, like
you're
just
right.
as like thinking
that
of
was a
like
Disney.
where it was. Technically, that is a Disney movie. Although I do
That is a
agree, the
Disney
animation in this movie was unbelievable. Even the almost like
Elemental.
pixelizations or like however you want to call
Yeah.
it, like it
Like
it.
mm-hmm.
I was like waiting, and you kind of see towards without going to spoilers, you see it at the end, like a little bit almost of a callback to that. I was like trying to see like what that means, and maybe it's going to happen in like the third movie if there's going to be some kind of like other meaning behind that. But I felt like in this movie more so in the first, like that was shown off way more of just like it's like this aura or almost kind of a thing or like an energy almost.
Not to be that guy, but what format did y'all see this in?
Dolby.
Standard.
Okay, I caught it in IMAX, and this was.
Ooh.
I don't normally go to IMAX screenings. I usually just opt into Dolby because I'm like I'm an ear guy, not an eye guy. Whatever.
No, we're no
I
kink
did
shaming.
notice. I did notice that. Yeah, I think the idea is that each of the emotions are a bundle of like neurons and stuff, and so it's like they kind of coalesce in a special way. But seeing it in IMAX, I was like, I could identify each like cluster of atoms that's creating each of these things, and that was like a lot of fun to see.
I guess the last Pixar movie was Elemental, but even then, Elemental had amazing fire and water sims and great animation for a lot of those interactions with like the elements, and I think a lot of the cloud, like a lot of the steam. If I remember that movie correctly, there is a lot of like clouds because fire and water make steam, and so a lot of that animation kind of showed itself there. And then before that, I guess it was Lightyear, and Lightyear was pretty solid too, in terms of just like what they pushed the medium to. But given that Disney and Pixar kind of dip into the same pot, it would make sense that I thought Encanto was a Pixar movie, even though it wasn't. But I'm sure a lot of those resources and technology in that similar kind of development, branch into different areas, and yeah.
But even like what was the Valentina, the hockey player, like at the camp, the lightest of spoilers. Even her being like a brown character, I could totally see her being like plucked out of Inside Out 2 and thrown into Encanto. Like that world really blended.
They definitely like mix and match. Absolutely. And they're
probably for sure. Shout out to Pixar. They're right down. I was gonna say they're right down the street. They're not down the street. They're across the bay.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Bay Area High School. I caught that. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, I thought the story was great. I dug the. I guess we're going to spoilers. If we're not fully already.
Yes. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Spoilers from here on out. From the jump when it was like puberty hits and it's like a construction crew comes in and it's like, all right, yep, we're just gonna tear all this up, and they're like, we're just like I was cracking up. I thought all that was so funny. It was so the whole like slightly upset and like the over the top emotions, like I really, really dug it. And like it was probably just a thing of like, I don't know what it would have been like to be 12 or 13 and like watch that. you know, I have to, maybe it was relatable. I'm certainly for the parents, it was definitely relatable. And I dug the like cuts to like the parents' emotions. And like the fact that like sadness was running the mom and the fact that anger was running the dad. Like I thought those were such like great little like nods. At least someone that has an angry dad. I thought that was like very, very funny. And it was the whole, yeah, like the blending in of like the emotions, and it's no longer just joy and like all the good with the bad to like form a complex person. It felt very well thought out. It felt very real. It felt like it had a very good message while still being very funny. So I loved it.
Yeah, I like how both the first and the second one really do handle a lot of the complexity that is being a human, and even now branching into that lore of like your beliefs, and they have to go from the brain through the subconscious to the very bottom, to the very like, the river of consciousness ends there. Like this is who you are, and all of your memories make you who you are. Um, and it it's too real, man. It's too real.
Yeah.
This isn't an animation. This isn't this is a documentary. This happened. This happens to everyone.
Literally. To answer your question, Dylan, I would imagine, like, if I were 12 or 13 watching this, I would absolutely identify with everything that was happening. But the moment somebody called that out in me, I would deny it vehemently.
Hmm.
Like, how dare you know what you're talking about? Like that, it would be like anger slightly touching the console for me.
Or embarrassment just laying on top of the entire like, control board.
So good.
I call him the
goodness.
cringe emotion, because man, when embarrassment hit, I was secondhand embarrassed. I retreated into my seat. I was like, oh my god, this is, I can't.
And even when he zips, like,
Yeah,
ties
zips
the
himself
hoodie
up.
so
Yeah.
you don't see him a whole lot, and then he turns around and like kneels and you can see his crack showing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh god, you poor, you don't even know. And then like the high five moment of like trying to, oh no, it's gonna be a fist. Oh, okay. Oh gosh. I also, just speaking of the story a little bit more, I appreciate so much that like this through line that we've been seeing. And to your point, Dylan, we see that not only is sadness running the ship on mom, but like all the other emotions have kind of adapted sadness's like attire, and same thing for dad and anger. But clearly we can still see that joy is running things at Riley's camp. Everybody still is like their very distinct emotion because she's still young. But we do see, from the first Inside Out, that Riley is in a lot of ways like toxically encouraged to be positive and to be joyful. And like her parents even said, like, oh, there's my happy girl. And what happened to my happy girl? Oh, like, where are you, monkey? And they do everything like kind of make her laugh and keep her happy. And intellectually, of course, they would want her to be able to experience sadness, or and we do see, based on the memories and stuff, they allow her to experience emotion and like express herself. But so much of her identity, so much of her, and that's what they talk about, her sense of self, is around the idea of being joyful and being happy and being upbeat. And so seeing her reconcile that like she's allowed to be sad about the move from the first movie, and then in this movie she's allowed to be a little conflicted about everything that's happening at this hockey camp, was so important to see. And even like, and I was triggered, to your point, Jose, about like this is a documentary, because I do it consciously in some instances, but sometimes I do have emotions or bad things that happen to me, and people are like, "Oh man, remember that thing? Oh, I'm so sorry that." And I'm like, "What?" And then it like extreme consciousness brings that memory back down, and I'm like, "Oh right, that terrible thing did happen. No, I locked that up and tossed that, like, hit the eject button quickly on that thing." But it's oh gosh, this movie. Um, and I will say, just to shift gears a little bit, because I might cry this pod. I don't know. We'll see. But I love the puns. I love the puns, the sarcasm, and like the echo, like,
Yeah.
makes you
Hmm.
a sarcastic response. I love the brainstorm. which, you know, Spy Kids, I think, had the best brainstorm we've ever seen.
Shout out, Pal.
Wow. Oh, man.
Also was in Dark Knight Rises. He's the guy that works at Wall Street when Bane steals the thing off of him. That's Glenn Powell. Yeah.
This man will not lose a job. Stays with a job.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate it. You shouted it out earlier. The stream of consciousness. That was a lot of fun to see. A literal stream, and like she's thinking about food, and like, oh, she wants pizza, and there's like a pizza to float on, and then broccoli. And
like broccoli.
Stuff. Yeah.
And all the anxiety attack as well, as you know, I was 16 when I had my first anxiety attack. I remember it like really very, very vividly. And just that like feeling of just the like stuck and frozen and like the like single tear in the like it's just like nothing is even able to like get through to you. That felt very real to me. And all of it, I mean, like I went to a different high school than all of my friends. So like I that was very relatable to me in that kind of sense of just like, and it was just like how it wasn't her choice to where like her friends weren't going to her high school. It was just my parents like, nah, this is the high school you're going to, and like deal with it. And so it was just like one of those things of just like that felt kind of relatable in that kind of sense, as well as like, you know, the whole like, I'm not trying to ignore my friends, but I am trying to like build new friends. And like, what does that look like? And like having to like properly do that correctly. And I also didn't do that properly because I'm a child, or was a child. And so it was just like, all that was really interesting, and how it was like, oh, hey, if like anxiety takes full control, it's bad, you know? And it's like, this is all and it's just like how if it's just joy or just this or just that. So it was very, 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 very well done, well thought out. Yeah.
I'll also say, this might be a hot take. Anxiety, top 3 speedsters we've ever seen.
Right up there with Sonic and Flash.
Right up there with Sonic.
Dang, Flash not getting love. Alrighty. More of a Quicksilver guy?
I mean, yes. That's my favorite. That's my favorite family in Marvel, the Maximovs.
And welcome back to the Marvel podcast.
But yeah, no, that moment at the end, and then like I don't think I've ever had an anxiety attack. Again, I may have, and then ejected that memory, so it's gone. But the idea of like even like the heart rate racing and everything, that was so gripping to watch. I felt so bad for our girl in the penalty cage or whatever, penalty box. Yeah, I've seen capitals happen.
Shout out to hockey. I mean, yeah, you guys are all just hitting it on the head. It's too real. I keep going back to it's too real. I know there's a podcast where we break down the movies, but go watch Inside Out 2. It's just we cannot do it justice on how emotionally relatable everything is. From, you know, even the bits and pieces we're talking about, anxiety to embarrassment to joy. Like, it's just so well thought out. Like, when you get older, you experience less joy. Oh my god. Fuck.
Yeah, that hit home. A slight change to the everything with like the memory vault and the like big embarrassing secret, and like the Cloud Strife wannabe, like the all of that I thought was so funny. All like I loved this movie. This is one of my favorite Pixar movies. Like, absolutely adored it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I will say, just because I you know, when the first Inside Out movie came out, I spent a lot of time on Tumblr. Tumblr, I think, was peak at that time. This sequel is 9 years later. Like in real life, it was. Damn. You know, I think it's the next year or something for Riley.
You know, you just told me you're a millennial without telling me you're a millennial because you use Tumblr. Going back to how old Vaughn is.
I can't even do this right now. But a lot of folks on Tumblr were speculating. God, I can feel the grays just like taking over. Speculating about Riley possibly, and this I think was during a time when they were in a way to introduce diversity for established characters. They would introduce like a queer character or like a character who did not have an explicit orientation. They would say, "Oh, look, maybe they were queer." And so there were thoughts about Riley possibly being queer, and there's justification because whereas we see the parents' emotions are all like, even though mom is, identifies as female, presumably, her emotions are all, even like the male emotions like anger was still, had the same hair, like was presenting as female. Same thing with dad, all his emotions were presenting as male, but we see Riley's present as both genders. So the idea that like maybe Riley is trans or anything like that. And then in this film, like having that little nugget of a thought, I was like, she could be looking up to this other hockey player, but there's also some justification, some wiggle room here for her to have a crush on her and not to have the language for that yet. And I thought that was really interesting. And I was like, this Pixar will not do this. Like, there's not going to be a straight up like Riley like has this come to Jesus moment, ironically, where she's like, oh, I actually like Vivian. What was it, Valentina? But I thought that like there was a lot of groundwork there. I was like, oh, the Tumblr fanboys and fangirls, wherever they are now, are probably losing their minds. And I thought for a while, because I typically when we watch a film, when the credits start rolling, I'm sitting there like looking to see like who, like to give credit to whomever. But that's when I started typing out my notes and like my initial thoughts about the movie. And my question that I wrote down was like, what was the dark secret? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't get the dark secret. And then it was about like burning the rug or something like that. And I was like, now come on, y'all. I think, come on. We know. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
I thought it was funny because it did feel very like that's something that like a kid would think is like a big secret, and it's really not that big, or the parents already know. I mean, how often like were you things that like you thought you were hiding from your parents and they've known the entire time?
Mm-hmm. I remember reading before this came out that there were a couple emotions that were going to be in it, but then they cut it because it was quote unquote too heavy. And so maybe to your point, Vaughn, they had a similar sort of idea that maybe they can explore something like that. But the emotions were that were cut were shame, guilt, jealousy, and Schadenfreude. So, and they were like, "Yeah, this is too much."
That's for 3.
Yeah, I mean, Schadenfreude especially, and to your point though, Dylan, like if they do an Inside Out 3, which they should do,
Probably will,
and it should come with a free therapy session. There should be a QR
QR
code you can
code?
scan. At the
It's
end
on
of the
there
movie,
the entire time on the like one of the corners
in the bottom right.
Yeah,
every frame. But yeah, it'd be interesting given that like I love that they introduced ennui of that sense of just like I don't care about anything, and ennui is being a French word, is a French like character type emotion, and then Schadenfreude being like taking pleasure in someone else's pain, being a German word, like that we could get some fun interplay between ennui and Schadenfreude. That'd be really fun.
I'm assuming anger would probably be friends with Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
Big time.
But jealousy, guilt, and shame, I feel like all 3 of those are pretty relatively negative.
Well, yeah, I think jealousy, is going to sit somewhere in between disgust and envy.
Or maybe jealousy turned into envy.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Which, shout out to Ayo Adibri, but I feel like envy should have played a bigger of a role. Like, I wish I could have seen them run the console. They were just kind of like there,
I think, yeah, given the circumstance, they didn't have a lot to do. Mm-hmm. Like there was this need to impress.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if there's a story beat where maybe Valentina, even though the other girls are going to a different school, maybe
Mm-hmm.
Valentina is like nicer to Grace or Bree, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like she is being nicer to those girls, and we see Riley trying to impress
Mm-hmm.
her and not work, and so she becomes envious of her friends, and then Joy has to watch this all happen and be like, no, but those are our best friends, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Or something that I just realized, if envy is like small, maybe she'll eventually grow into jealousy. Talking
You heard
about
it here
developing
first.
those emotions, and having time to let everyone have their own space. Maybe that will build into something else.
Wow, damn, that's
Pixar, give me $200 million, please.
good. Precisely 200 mil. And I also loved just at the very end, the message. I don't know if y'all stuck around and saw it, but from I guess from the team, they said this film is dedicated to our kids. We love you just the way you are,
Mm.
and that hit me square in the feels. And that's all I have. Again, because emotions and still processing and documentary.
Want to give it a rating, and then
A+, no real notes. Yeah, you pass. Flying colors. 10 out of 10. Positive 10 out of 10.
A B+ only because it's too real.
that's a compliment.
It's too real. It's such a good movie. Too relatable, offensively relatable. Where I'm like, how dare you?
Offensively relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably either like a 9.5 or a 10, and yeah, like an A+. Just like really, really good. Pixar at its best.
And shout out to Maya Hawke, holding down the fort is anxiety.
Queen Nepo baby.
Is she the queen?
I just forgot the name. There's another Nepo baby whose name I'm forgetting because she's
Chet
changed her.
Hanks.
Who?
Chaz?
Chaz Hanks.
Chet
What,
Hanks.
Boy
Chet
Summer.
Hanks?
Yeah, that's what I said. Chet Hanks.
I thought you were talking about Chaz, Sonny and Cher's son, Chaz.
Blue Ivy, another Nepo baby. Are we just going down the list of Nepo babies?
There's so many.
Bronny James.
Northwest playing young Simba at the
Northwest.
Hollywood Bowl.
Oof.
Although I did see a take there that was exactly right, because the whole point of that song is that it's like Simba is a Nepo baby in a lot of ways. And so you get a Nepo baby to play a Nepo baby.
So something I took from that, though, if we're gonna tangent to this before we wrap up, it's crazy how Blue Ivy Carter is being dealt with in like being in the star, and it's like kind of being drip fed into this broader world that Beyonce's in, but Kim Kardashian being just like a different level of rich, to the point where she could just put her daughter in a show, just goes to show the two different parenting styles and potentially the two different futures that these children are going to go through. Just I just wanted to throw that out there because I've been thinking about it. Just it's crazy what Nepo babies are going through.
Shout out to SNL as well. When I think it's from this past season, when Dakota Johnson was the guest, they had a "Please Don't Destroy" video about. Just check it out. But there's a Nepo baby reference where they have a ring, like the Wonder Twins powers, and they have a chant, a foot in the door, and so much more. It's hysterical. Check it out.
Yeah, it's great.
And to tie it back to this movie, SNL, James Austin Johnson he usually will play Donald Trump these days. And he is the voice of Pouchy. The end.
The end?
I was trying to find this Nepo baby. I couldn't figure out who it was.
All right. Any context?
No, I can't remember. They're the child of two people that are ridiculously famous, but they don't use their last name. I can't figure out who it is.
I mean, Beyonce and Jay-Z don't use their last names, so
sure. But you know who Blue Ivy Carter is, like just by the name Carter, like. Yeah.
Oh, so the Nepo baby doesn't use their parents' name?
Yeah.
Is it Brad Pitt's daughter?
No, because that just happened, and they're not like famous. Yeah. It's someone that is like very famous and very talented. That is like but whatever. It's not a big deal.
That is not using their parents' name. So, and now I'm invested in this. We'll figure it out and bring it back to the pod next week or not. I don't know. Whatever.
Class dismissed.
Ring that bell.
Check the show notes. Go see Von's play.
Yes, there's still time to see it.
Have a great day.
Yes.